YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, and if you're seeing a whole bunch of beautiful computer components that are about to be an awesome build in the background, then that's right, your eyes do not deceive you. That is what one of you is going to win. So this is a MSI gave me the B350 Tomahawk. They're also donating an Radeon RX 580 graphics card. And then there's AMD who provided me with the Ryzen 5 1600X. And then the rest of the parts I purchased out of my own pocket because I wanted to do an awesome giveaway for y'all. This is about $1,000 worth of gaming components going into what's going to be an awesome build. It's going to be a neat series where I teach you how to build a computer. In fact, Mrs. Heir is going to teach you how to build the computer because she's never done it before, and I want to show you that it's easy. You can do it. If you like playing computer games, you should build your own computer. You can actually get a really good value out of building your own computer, and I'm going to give you tips on how to build a computer that fits your budget and maximizing performance. I've gone a little bit overboard with this one here, above a budget build, because when I give it away, I want it to be awesome. I want someone to get a prize that they will never forget, and that's the goal there. So yes, you can win all this. Keep your eyes out for the details. I will probably be using Gleam for the giveaway, and I'm working out a few more details with MSI, and I believe I'm going to do a cooperation with Lionheart on this as well, so he can cover like a certain part of the world for the giveaway, and then I would cover another part of the world for the giveaway. We'd each give away something similar. So very, very exciting. Like I said, keep your eyes out for it. We're going to jump into a replay. It's, the first one is going to be some Clan Angren versus Musion. So let me get this image out of your way so you can see. There we go. And we're going to pop back over into the game. So this is going to be, yeah, like I said, Musion versus Clan Angren. And Clan Angren actually brought an Ethereal Thane, which against the vampire counts, it could be either really good or really bad. Just depends on whether the vampires bring units that cause magical damage. Certain units of theirs do, and certain do not. Got a Blood Knight hiding out in the forest. And then the Red Duke moving up this flank. So the Red Duke does not have magical damage. There is no magical damage that I'm aware of for any units in this vampire army. So the Ethereal Thane actually could potentially be a good pick as long as the vampire doesn't have Spirit Leech. And Spirit Leech would be absolutely brutal on an Ethereal unit. And this Red, I don't believe the Red Duke can use Spirit Leech. So I think that the Ethereal Thane is safe. Let's go check out the Dwarf army. It's positioned way over here. So Rangers with great weapons and several Quarrelers with great weapons. Interesting. I wonder why Quarrelers with great weapons. Trollhammer Torpedo, Belagar, and we've got Halkenhalf Stonebeard here, who's the Ethereal Thane. Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, a couple of Peak Gate Guards. So the Ironbreakers and the Peak Gate Guards could potentially be really, really good in this type of matchup because the vampires don't have missiles. The challenge is going to be here is that when they bring all this expensive infantry, they have less to protect all these really nice missile units they have, and there's a lot of them. And then the dwarves are kind of in like an odd downslope position back here, where I would think if anything they may want to be potentially in the forest. Yeah, so you can see that the Red Duke is trying to shut down the Rangers with great weapons. That's not going to work real well with zombies. The Rangers with great weapons are actually pretty good. Here's a Wind of Death, though. Oh, that Wind of Death shut that Ranger down and then went straight through both these Quarrelers. So normally you see the Wind of Death only when people are lined up perfectly. That was actually a really nice Wind of Death. Really nice Wind of Death. Because now the Red Duke he's sacrificed some hit points and he's used some magic, but he's turned around and gotten 86 kills on skirmishers that would have otherwise been potentially devastating to some of his key units like Cryptors and the Corpse Cart. So I think that was actually a really nice, nicely played moment there by the Red Duke. And again, this is the challenge that you have to deal with when it comes to dwarves. That was an interesting Raise the Dead back here in the woods. Maybe he's just going to use it to harass the dwarf flank. I don't know. So let's see what happens. I'm going to fast forward again. The Trollhammer Torpedoes, if they get a hold of the Red Duke, they will kill him in a huge hurry. Huge hurry. But they are so difficult to protect. So over here we've got some dwarf warriors going to be thrown into the zombies. They will easily shut down this crumbling unit of zombies. Look at the Red Duke. He's like, all right, gonna sit over here in the corner for a minute and shake off some of the grudging that I just earned. So yeah, the Red Duke's gonna need to do some pretty serious healing. Let's see what happens in the rest of this battle here. But that was a pretty solid Wind of Death. The Blood Knights are lining up, so the Blood Knights are going to be a huge problem for the Dwarf, because there's all this vampire infantry, and I just really struggle to see how the Dwarf is going to protect against Raise the Dead, Blood Knights, Crypt... Oh, my Wind of Death. Good grief. Right down the main Dwarf line through all these expensive infantry. It wasn't as good because it wasn't overcast, but still, the amount of damage done there. So it didn't get him any kills, but look at the damage it did to the Dwarf infantry. So Vampires really showing some of the dangers that they can bring to the battlefield here. If the Dwarves want to beat the Vampires, which they absolutely can, I don't recommend doing it in the way that this Dwarf player is doing it. This Dwarf player was counting on some very elite units making an epic and heroic stand versus the Vampires, which, don't get me wrong, sounds really cool, but it's not really feasible because the Vampires are going to hit you with stuff like this where you just can't get away from all the ways they're going to shut down your skirmishing. So what I would suggest if you were going to try and take on the Vampire Counts, this type of Vampire Counts army, you would have been much, much better off with very few skirmishers so that the Vampires don't have as much to try and go after there, and just way more infantry with like a Rune Lord and a Runesmith. And in that case, you could use 2 Runesmiths and the Rune Lord to just rip apart Vampire infantry with the Runes of Wrath and Ruin, and same thing with the Blood Knights. And then it would buff all the troops around you and keep their leadership up really high, so that basically you can actually win battles of attrition sometimes versus the Vampire Counts. And then maybe 1 unit or 2 units of Rangers with great weapons so that you can actually try and protect them properly. Because in this case, the Dwarves are now just utterly surrounded. Belegar needs to get back into the fight. The Ethereal Thane, like I said, he's going to do fine. I mean, there's nothing here to really go after. Look, Trollhammer Torpedoes, so much spin, and then they just get caught by Cryptors. So that's the danger of a unit like this. If it could actually get shots at the Red Duke, like I said, they could drop his trash in a hurry, but it's just not going to happen. Belegar is using like all of these different abilities, but he's not in combat, so the Dwarf player making quite a few mistakes here. Quite a few mistakes. But that's okay, to be a good learning experience, and I'll go show you a build that I think would work much better versus the Vampires here in a moment. It's actually one of Ninja Hun's strategy guide builds, and if you want to use his strategy guide, I highly recommend it. If you do not know how to pick good armies in multiplayer, you should absolutely be using a strategy guide. It will help you win, and it will help you understand the game better so that you can actually get into building your own stuff. Now the Ethereal Thane's going to get attacked. And at this point, I mean, the Ethereal Thane's going to be the only unit standing soon between him and Belegar, and Belegar is probably going to rout due to army losses. He has an unbreakable ability, but I think it was actually either already used or just isn't present. But it only keeps him unbreakable for a little while. So yeah, Belegar's screwed. And the Ethereal Thane, like I said, he's going to stand for a while, but I mean, he's not going to be able to withstand the damage of an entire army. He'll be very, very tanky, but not that tanky. So it looks like the White King is slowly but surely getting the damage done to him. And then the Red Duke and the others have shut out Belegar. And so now it's just a matter of wrapping up that Ethereal Thane, who looks like he's going to last for another 50 some odd seconds, which is in and of itself quite impressive. Yeah, the Dwarves just got absolutely slaughtered here. This was not a good pick versus the Vampires. But I love the Winds of Death, and that was why I showed this replay. Let's watch one more replay real quick, and then I'll go show you some armies that have to do with both these. We're going to watch a Bretonia versus Vampires build here. Pineapple of Perfection. Man, I could use a good pineapple right now. So it looks like this is going to be a Halberd build versus the Vampires. Interesting. With now the pick of the Yeoman Archers, that's kind of interesting. I could see that being useful against the Vampires in the right situation. That is so many Halberds. And Fey Enchantress is not even on Silvaron. Kind of interesting pick there. There is a Grail Relic to support all these, and a couple of Paladins on foot. And then there's a couple of Grail Knights, which have they're very good versus monstrous infantry, which the Vampires do tend to field. In this case, there's some Fellbats. Ooh, don't let the Fellbats get your Yeoman Archers. There you go. There's a Terrorgeist as well. So we have Terrorgeist, the Red Duke on a flying Hellsteed, or whatever it's called. And then the front line is just zombies. And then there's Skeleton Spears. They spent so much money on the Terrorgeist that they're going to be running short on other funds because they have a Necromancer, Cryptors as well. Looks like the Yeoman Archers are going to fall back to try and lure the bats out. If the Grail Knights could come in to support against the bats, they would quickly shut down the bats, and they could shut down the Terrorgeist. Alright, with the Grail Relic this close, the leadership of these peasants is going to really be outstanding, and Halberds actually have really good melee defense. They're anti-large, and they're armor-piercing. So, a lot of potential capabilities. So let's see what happens. Yep, the Grail Knights get into the bats over here. The main Bretonnian line is going to start holding off the initial Vampire Surge. Let's see. The Vampire's using Arcane Conduit right now with the Red Duke trying to build up some magic. The bats are trying to be annoying, and they are being pretty annoying. There's 4 units of them in total. That's a lot of money on bats, actually, too. I'm not sure I would recommend spending that much money on bats. Probably 1 or 2 units of them is all you ever really want to bring because they're really just a harassing unit. They won't ever get a lot of work done. And the more you invest into them, the more dangerous it can be. Oh, there's 2 Terrorgeist. And look at that Wind of Death. It definitely got some of the Bretonnian units. It was 278 kills, so it got a lot of Bretonnian units, but it also did some damage to the Vampire units. That was a pretty absurd Wind of Death. Let's see whether or not these Yeoman Archers can get free of the bats and be useful. There's 3 of them on the battlefield, and the 2 Grail Knights really haven't engaged yet either. If they can get around for some rear charges, these Cryptors have not engaged yet. The Terrorgeist and the Red Duke are landing on the Paladin, and they're going to break his leadership in a big, big hurry. But the Grail Knights are trying to get into this fight too. Kind of dangerous because there's a lot of skeleton spears around. But if they could pin the Flyers, that would at least be a good start. And there's more Grail Knights, and there's lots of Halberds to support. The Fey Enchantress is now going to get attacked by Cryptors. She does have the Mist of the Lady, and there's a Grail Relic right next to her to help tank a little bit. Look at these Grail Knights swinging around for a very nice encirclement. If they can encircle... No, 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 no! Get around here and encircle the Flyers. Pin the Vampire Flyers on the ground. Don't let them get away. And then use the Fey Enchantress to heal this whole blob. You could probably outlast. The Necromancer's not being challenged, so he's going to really put a lot of healing down on these units over here. It's going to make it very difficult for Bretonnia to ever succeed. Let's see what's going on. The Yeoman Archers are kind of still just out and about toying with the bats when they could be useful at trying to pull down Cryptors. Both Grail Knights units disengaged from combat. Right here, this Cryptor unit attacking the Enchantress is a very easy target. For the Grail Knights, they could kill it almost instantly. So I'm kind of confused why they're not being used for that. Yeah, get that Cryptor. I mean, the Fey Enchantress is holding her own, but yeah, the Grail Knights could have easily shut down that Cryptor in moments, and then it would have been off the battlefield and no longer a concern. It is taking a lot of damage from Halberds, but still. The Bretonnian troops are being pretty resilient here, considering that so far they haven't countered the Vampire Flyers very well. The leadership on the Bretonnian peasants has been pretty solid, though the Paladin was just broken again. Some of the Yeoman Archers are back up close enough to be firing, but again, I wouldn't waste my ammo on the more highly armored Terrorgeist. I would start with the Cryptors, get those guys off the battlefield. And then, if anything, get your Yeoman Archers right here behind Vampire Infantry and just let them unload into the infantry and help take them off the battlefield quicker. Or pick the Necromancer. He's only got 15 armor. So the Necromancer, he does have some missile resistance, but he's lower armor. Oh, look at this. Terrorgeist gets caught by Grail Knights. It's not going to get away from the Grail Knights. And if the Lady is used to properly support the Grail Knights with something like a healing spell. Yeah, look at the Terrorgeist trying to get away. The only way it's going to be able to get away is if it uses its own infantry for cover long enough to get back in the air. Ooh, stay away from the Spearmen. Yeoman Archers back here still dealing with bats. Paladins come back from routing. Some more Bretonnian troops that can come back. Definitely want to keep the Grail Relic alive. The Lady is actually surviving a pretty insane beating, and she really needs help from the Grail Knights right now. The 2 Grail Knight units should have been kept very close to her. A Grail Guardian could have potentially been somewhat useful here too to help tank damage for her. But she is surviving fairly impressively. Look at the zombies being used here to keep the Grail Knights away. So the Fey Enchantress is in big, big trouble here, and she is almost certainly going to die. There is a Grail Knight headed in, but I don't know if it's going to work. Let's see. See if the Grail Knight can save her. She's using Arcane Conduit. The Grail Knight's charged in, but almost immediately pulled away. But the Fey Enchantress does survive. The one Terrorgeist took some pretty severe damage. It's right now slightly in favor of the Vampires, but I'm having a hard time knowing exactly who's going to win this one because it really kind of just depends on how well the Grail Knights get used for the rest. How well they get supported. Earthblood, replenishment coming in, that's going to help the lady heal herself up. She's about to come under attack again. There are Grail Knights very nearby though, but I mean, a good charge or two could definitely put the lady in jeopardy, and then all the zombies being used to hold the Grail Knights in place. But the lady not being on Sylvarin's actually kind of been a benefit here, because she gets knocked around and she's harder to hit with the charge. So yeah, maybe she should retreat behind these halberds and let the Grail Knights do some work here. Their anti-large damage is pretty good. They do magic damage. Oh, the lady's continuing to get charged by the Red Duke. The Chalice of Potions was used there, but I'm not sure how effective it was. It looks like it may have, I don't know, it may have gotten to quite a few of those spearmen. We'll see. Yeah, the lady's gonna die here. I mean, the Grail Knights are attempting an intercept here. They're trying to save her. The Grail Knights do have the mass to be able to potentially do so. More zombies coming up, so the Vampire's just been relentless with the zombies. Some of the yeomen who are out of ammo are being thrown into combat. If the lady can get enough magic to throw down an Earthblood, it is badly needed for the Grail Knights, who are suffering under the might of quite a few vampire troops. There's a lot of Bretonnian troops that need to get back into combat, and these yeomen can be thrown in too. You just want to keep these vampire units pinned down on the ground at this point. And if you lose your Grail Knights, you're not going to be able to keep them pinned down. But now that they're surrounded, the vampires have allowed themselves to be surrounded and trapped on the ground. Oh, look at the Terror guys breaking free. Yeah, the Fey Enchantress has got to do her best to stay away from these Terrorgeists. The Red Duke, though, is trapped. But the Grail Knights, there's not many of them left. Got Arcane Conduit going for the Fey Enchantress. She's probably trying to get enough magic together to do something useful. She's trying to be attacked by these Terrorgeists, but the Terrorgeists are at the same time running away from Grail Knights and Paladins, and it's breaking their leadership. They are trying desperately to kill the Fey Enchantress, who does, again, have Mist of the Lady. So, very important unit, and it's unbelievable that she's still alive. I love the cavalry use here. I don't know if it's intentional, but cavalry have the mass to actually slow monsters down. And it actually keeps the Enchantress alive, but she's now going to be attacked by bats. The bats probably won't cause her too much damage. Look at this, though. This really looked like it was going pretty well for the vampires, and Bretonnia's going to manage to turn this around. The Grail Knights, like I said the whole time, the Grail Knights were definitely the clutch unit here, and they were finally used towards the end of the battle in the way that they needed to be to gain a very Pyrrhic victory for Bretonnia. So, pretty sweet replays there. That was fun. That's fun. There's a lot of mistakes in both of them, but you know what? You learn from mistakes. So don't be afraid to submit stuff where you make mistakes, or maybe where you're asking for advice. I think in this case, people in the comments can give you advice on how to better use stuff. In the end, it ended up being a very interesting battle. Look at that Paladin, man. He must have gone on like a zombie killing spree. So interesting army. I've not seen that type of thing. The Red Duke got an absurd amount of kills with that Wind of Death. It was very impressive. In the end, though, the Grail Knights just punching through it, and keeping the Grail Relic alive helped keep all the infantry into the later game, and you can see that that was very beneficial for Bretonnia. Let's take a look at the, let's see, the army I was telling you about for the dwarves. So from the first battle, if you wanted a better dwarf army, oh, actually I don't have it on this computer, but I can give you, I've got it on my laptop. I need to get all those army builds over onto this one. So basically you'd want something like this. And you can take your Rune Lord. Don't put him on the Anvil of Doom for that very reason that you saw in this video. When you put a character on a mount, it's going to make, they won't bounce around. And when they do bounce around, it actually makes them harder to kill. So don't put your Rune Lord up on the Anvil of Doom. And you're going to want to do something like this with him. I mean, you can bring the Master Rune of Negation, but this is a cheaper way to get what you want out of him. You don't need the Unbreakable traits. There you get a fairly cheap Lord. And just the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and the Rune of Oath and Steel, or, yeah, the Rune of Oath and Steel, will give you a lot of tankiness here. And if you want the charge resistance and immune to psychology, I mean, you can bring some of this stuff. Again, it's up to you. But what I would do with the 2 runesmiths is, and again, the plus 8% armor piercing damage, I don't really think that's a big deal. I think you can save some money by leaving that at home and doing something like this. Just bring the Rune of Wrath and Ruin, and on one of your runesmiths, bring the Master Rune of Grungni, which, well, I mean, if you're against the vampires, don't bring the Master Rune of Grungni. Just bring, like, this one, for instance, Groth One Eye. Or, these 2 should stack because they're different. So you could bring one of them with Groth One Eye, and you could bring the other one, again, this is specifically meant against the vampires, which is what we saw earlier. And some of you may be like, why don't you bring the Runes of Negation? You can, if you have the money. It depends on your build. But that's what I would do right here, something to that order, and then maybe throw in this immune to psychology thing since you're up against the vampires. So like that would be a good leadership core. And then in terms of an army, you know, if you're going to go up against the vampires, I mean, the Grumbling Guard is usually a pretty solid choice. It is very hard to get off the battlefield. So like the Grumbling Guard, Dragonback Slayers, and another Slayer are usually a pretty good choice. And then I would really focus on quite a few Dwarf Warriors. And the Dwarf Warriors are just great, you know, somewhat tanky units that you can use. And if you were going to bring any missiles, like I said, maybe like the Ulthar's Raiders and one Ranger with great weapons. These will be easier to protect. Let's see, you got 4 Dwarf Warriors. You can protect them with the Dragonback Slayers, which are really good against zombies. And then in terms of the rest of your troops, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, you could bring, you know, you could bring some Longbeards. You could try and get some beards with great weapons. The more units you can put on the battlefield, the better, because it's just going to give the vampire more to deal with. So again, I don't know if this is the perfect army. I'm just trying to give you an example. This is a huge army. You definitely have to watch out for Wind of Death, so you just keep an eye on the vampire player. And if you see them lining something up, you just retreat your troops from where they're lining up. You just have to be vigilant. So now you've got Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin and 2 more Wrath and Ruins. So you can basically tear apart lines of Graveguard, Blood Knights, or anything else that comes around you. So those are extremely handy. These 2 units, you do your best to keep them safe with the Slayers. And then the Ulthar's Rangers can pin the Red Duke down when he gets in the right position, and they can hammer him and kill him extremely quickly. So I think something like this would be a lot more effective against the vampires, because you're going to almost be able to out-tank the vampires even though you don't have healing, just because you have all these runesmiths and all these buffs and the right units that are super, super tanky and can cause a lot of damage. Hope you all enjoyed this. HeirofCarthage signing out for now. Appreciate MSI sponsoring the channel. If you want to subscribe, please click my logo down in the bottom right-hand corner. It will keep you up to date with the latest videos and help keep you up to date on that upcoming giveaway. HeirofCarthage signing out. I'll see you next time.